Metro 2033 is an underrated video game that you should absolutely play in 2024. I mean, have you ever wanted to play a game where you can hear Spider-Man be Russian, a communist, or a Nazi?
All right, you Red Scum. Offer a prayer to your Marx or whoever.
And oh boy, is Metro 2033 Redux the game for you. Redux? Redo? I don't know how you pronounce it. The one you're going to find in all the online stores. Now, Metro as a franchise I truly think is underrated, but for this video, I just want to focus on the first one, Metro 2033. And don't come at me, I know Last Light's the best of the series, I'm just not there at my replay yet. I'm playing it right now. Thanks, don't forget to like and subscribe. Games these days are often way too big. Even games that I really enjoy, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, often hurt themselves by being these everlasting gobstopper games that are designed to keep you playing forever. I mean, I know me and most people on the internet are always yearning for our childhood era of gaming when things were simpler. And Metro 2033 shows exactly what made the 2000s and early 2010s great, and it reminds me of why I fell in love with games in the first place. It's a short game with a good story filled with charming character that you could beat over just a simple weekend. Now, to get into the many specific reasons I love the game, it's got weird, deliberate, almost like simulation mechanics that feel like menial tasks. For example, you have to manually wipe your blood from your gas mask, or you get to walk around burning cobwebs with your lighter. It's also got this interesting world with warring government factions. But if I'm being honest, the first thing I would say comes to mind when I think of Metro is, well, technically trains, but besides that is the word ambiance. And for those that may not exactly know what that word means, the official definition is the character and atmosphere of a place. And Metro 2033 has that in droves. It also helps that the Redux versions have been remastered and look great. But this remaster is also necessary to help create that ambiance and sell all the lighting and the environmental art that makes Metro so unique. Lots of people wonder if Metro is like Fallout, and my answer is always they're really apples to oranges. Where Fallout is more about like wacky Pax Americana in an open nuclear wasteland, Metro is its harsh Russian counterpart that has just been grounded down by the realities of a World War III ravaged world. And for those that may not know, Metro is based off of a book series by Dmitry Glukovsky. It's set in a world where, after nukes went off during World War III, the citizens of Moscow hid in the metro tunnels underneath the city, and there they've been living for the last 2 decades, leaving the world outside a ravaged wasteland filled with mutant animals that only the bravest, or the most desperate, would ever dare to venture out. And let's just say the developers have done a great job of what it would look like for thousands of people to suddenly live in train tunnels for 2 decades. Its art style isn't quirky or fun, it's got this rusty, brutalist function over fashion in a brilliant, like, dumpster diving sort of way. And to get my point across, there's a freaking shotgun completely assembled out of bicycle parts. And that thing is a beast. But you partner those ramshackle designs with industrial steelwork, filth, and then you just slap Russian language all over the place, and then you've got the art design of Metro. And the game does a really good job of using its environments to great effect to create this like very tense, cramped atmosphere. And whether it's missions where you're just creeping through dark tunnels or you're making your way through a very crowded town where you can just hear NPC conversations all stacking on top of each other, it creates a sense of claustrophobia that really helps in the game's favor. Now, I'm not going to get any spoilers here, but the game's plot also adds to that claustrophobic feeling by creating a sense of impending danger in the metros, one that people can't run away from. I mean, it's a real do or die moment where everyone's back is against the wall, and it leaves our protagonist Artyom with this journey that he has to set out on because there's nowhere to run. But of course, because it's a video game, Artyom does have to be geared up for his journey, which is another place that this game excels in feeling unique. I talked earlier about how it's menial task-like mechanics, like having a button specifically to wipe off your gas mask, but that's honestly just scratching the surface. You have weapons like the pneumatic rifle, and you have to manually pump the air into the gun for it to shoot properly. And then you have to do things like change your gas mask filter so you won't suffocate and die. You have to use a low light on your watch to properly utilize darkness so that you can accomplish stealth really well. And all these things also provide this really awesome way to create a contextual HUD that perfectly fits in the world, similar to the way Dead Space does. This helps keep peak immersion and feeds even more into that ambiance I talked about earlier. These are also deliberate design choices that help keep the pace nice and slow, where you really have to think about what you're doing. This isn't like Call of Duty where you're going to be running down hallways and just mowing down enemies. A lot of times you really have to utilize stealth, and sometimes it's best just to sneak around an enemy so that you can conserve your ammo. And it all adds to this nice, slow, deliberate pace that this game has without ever feeling like it's boring. And I mean, it's important to note, it knows when to crank up the action and throw you into a hectic gunfight with mutant animals clawing at your throat, but the game really balances those two styles out, and it always feels like you're invested with what's going on. And to talk more about the balancing of pace in Metro 2033, it also manages to be this nice little mix between genres. And I don't mean that in like a modern context where every game is trying to be every genre and speak to every single audience. It really only chooses 2, maybe 3 genres to pull from that make sense for the world and the game they're trying to make, and it makes those elements shine really well. In some ways, it's a survival horror game where you're stumbling around in the dark, you're looking for ammo and spare gas mask filters and things like that, all while trying to not pick too many fights because you don't know what you're going to run into around the next corner. Then it also pulls from more old school immersive stealth titles like Thief, where you're sneaking around and you're individually cutting off lights and switching off breaker boxes, so that way you can really stay concealed in darkness while you sneak around your enemies, and you get to decide whether or not you want to engage with them. And that's something also that I have to say. And also shout out to the devs for actually making a fun first-person stealth game. We don't get enough of those these days, and that's a genre that I really love. But then, like I said earlier, it does have its moments where it has more almost Call of Duty style action. For instance, there's a mission where you just get to cut loose on Nazis with a mounted machine gun. But what I'm trying to say is Metro 2033 knows exactly what it is trying to be, and it knows when to switch up its style to keep the game feeling like a nice blend of things that really pair well together. Now, I haven't talked much about the story, and a lot of that is because I want to avoid spoilers for you guys, but I can talk about certain things that make the game great without giving away plot details. Having old world factions like Nazis and communists survive the apocalypse and keep their ideologies going on in the Metro is actually really cool in my opinion. You could see how people would want to hold on to those familiar ideas to try and make sense of the chaos that comes with just a completely new way of life underground. But then you throw the Rangers into that mix, who are almost like Knights of the Round Table, and they kind of operate with their own chivalrous code where they don't really, like listen or adhere to certain groups. They kind of do what they need to do to protect people from both humans and mutants alike. And I'm gonna be honest, guys, I'm a sucker for tropes. So if you have a group of badass soldiers who fight for truth, justice, and just to protect the people that just can't protect themselves, I'm always gonna think that's cool. But when you take all these different factions and then you put them in the tunnels where they can't really just run away from each other, you have these really awesome conflicts that happen that you just want to watch unfold in the world. Metro also introduces these small moments throughout the world that keep you on your toes. And to explain what I mean, Metro feels like a world based in science and machinery and logic. Granted, there are mutant science fiction creatures, but even those feel like they can be explained and you can see how those evolved naturally, or at least somewhat naturally. But then certain things happen in the world that almost feel mystical or supernatural or maybe even religious at times. And as a player, it keeps you wondering just how weird this world is and how much has 2 decades of nuclear pollution really affected the natural order. This very much plays into like the main story, but I don't want to go too in depth with it. I just really think it's something worth mentioning to entice you if you're on the fence of whether or not you want to play the game. Now, I realize I haven't talked a ton about the surface world of Metro, which honestly can be just as interesting and frightening as the Metro itself. I said earlier about how only the bravest and most desperate go onto the surface, and you understand that really quickly once you get there. The way nature and beasts have reclaimed the frozen city of Moscow, it feels almost alien. It's as if the city itself has died, and now all the mutant animals are just kind of picking at its corpse trying to stay alive. You can see the world that used to be there, but it obviously has been taken over by creatures. Some that are dangerous, but you can see what normal animal they used to be. But then there are some animals that are just downright hellish and otherworldly. Again, it keeps you on your toes wondering just how much the evolutionary chain has been contorted into something kind of grotesque and unrecognizable. I will also say this is the first time I really read the journal entries this time, and they are fascinating. I'm assuming that they're just direct excerpts from the books themselves, but they provide really interesting commentary from Artyom and his thoughts on characters, events that are going on in the world, and it's honestly much welcomed context considering Artyom is silent throughout the game except during loading screens. But again, I just think it really gives a fascinating look into a single person's perspective. He has interesting conversations with himself about how humans really still are the most dangerous beast, even in this mutated world, or how all these political factions are still holding on to these dead ideologies, or just observations on the more memorable characters in the game. In my opinion, it just goes to add even more character into this already somber, charming world. Metro 2033 is an incredibly immersive, unique, and charming game. And a lot of that charm comes from the fact that it's rough around the edges and it doesn't take 100 hours to finish. It's just a quick linear game of a bygone era, which is so refreshing in an age where we're just onslaught with open world titles that really kind of lack the carefully crafted care that can come from a more strictly guided experience. I couldn't recommend this game enough, and it's definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of older game designs like myself. But what do you guys think about Metro 2033? Do you think it's underrated? And honestly, what is your favorite of the series? Is it this one? Is it Last Light? Or maybe it's even Exodus? Let me know in the comments below. I really do always love chatting with you guys. And as always, thanks for watching.